Welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show. Great to have you with me here today, and cannot wait to dive into today's topic on the closest thing we have right now to the fountain of youth. And I say that because there's a lot of research and there are a lot of studies. But when we truly look at what has worked well in humans, what has worked well for the past many millennia versus some newer age-based studies, we know a few things. We know a few things that will for sure extend lifespan, but not only that, they will decrease disease or dis-ease in your body. So the amazing thing is this, that back when I was 18 years old, I got certified as a personal trainer. And a lot of the things that I was taught in nutrition and exercise physiology works for body transformation, but it is not the best thing to do for longevity. So at some point, people prefer and would choose yes, absolutely having a flat stomach, being in good shape, but disregarding or just not being as fixated on the six-pack abs and saying, I would much rather not wear my body out and keep it healthy for decades to come. And there is a little bit of a trade-off, because I'll tell you this right now. In order to transform the body, let me take you back to when I was 18, and 18 to really, I would say, my mid-20s. What we did was this. We had clients eating every 2 to 3 hours, small meals, and, very specific macros. We would look at their carbs, their protein, and their fat. And we would have them exercising 3, 4, 5 days per week. And you know what? They got in fantastic shape because it does work. It absolutely does work. So when you're eating every 2 to 3 hours, what happens is you're eating, about 6 meals or so per day, 5 to 6 meals per day. And let's say they're all 250 to 300 calories or so. Okay, easy for most people to do. There is a little bit of prep involved. Typically, a couple of them are shakes to make it easier so that you're not actually making that many meals. Some of them might just be a little bit of almonds in between meals, something like that, right? So I don't know if you're familiar with those diets. I'm not going to go through it today because it's not what I'm preaching. And I don't think that we need to go into that type of diet anymore. I think we know a lot more. Not only can we transform your body, but we can also keep you healthy for life. So the mentality behind the every 2 to 3 hours, and the reason why we'll actually do 3 meals and a snack in between for the beginning stages in our body transformation practice is that they're going from maybe a more processed carbohydrate, processed food diet, and now we're taking them to a much healthier whole food diet. You can see the food growing in nature, you put it on your plate and you eat it, right? So we're absolutely all about that. But we also don't want people to feel deprived. So when you have them eating every 3 hours, a person, let's say you eat at 7 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 12:31, 4 o'clock, 6:30 at night. Let's say just that's the average person. And then you're doing breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then there's a mid-morning, mid-afternoon snack, and it could be something very light, easy to digest before that next meal. Well, what happens is the person is always feeling like they're eating. So they're always feeling satiated. And that's the nice thing, they're never hungry. Now, here's where the problem lies in. Yes, that will transform your body. There's no doubt about it. And before I get into what I would like you to do and the research behind it, I want to tell you why it's not the best for longevity. Okay. So when you are eating every 2 to 3 hours, there's a couple things that's happening. Yes, your stomach always feels like it's getting food. You feel satiated. And oftentimes there can actually be a boost in fat burning. And the reason is that hopefully there are some carbs and some good fats and other things in there. And you're restoring leptin and ghrelin levels. So your body says hey, I'm not starving. I'm eating every 3 hours. I'm living in a world right now where I get all the food that I want. Feel free, body, to burn body fat, to oxidize body fat. And hopefully, again, if there's some carbs in those meals, you will actually begin to lower cortisol levels because you're feeding your body. Your body's like, oh, okay. It's sending those relaxation-based neurotransmitters to the brain, and you're feeling, again, a little bit more relaxed. That's what eating does. Here's the problem, though. Yes, it cuts down on the hunger. You absolutely feel satiated. It can boost the fat burning. But every time you eat, and this is what a lot of people don't talk about, every time you eat, or if it's just an extremely large meal, you're most likely getting fluctuations in blood sugar. So that means you're getting a high or a little bit of at least an elevation every time that you eat. And again, this happens not just with carbohydrate meals, but oftentimes with a higher protein meal or even a higher glycemic load meal. That means that the food itself might not be a high glycemic food, meaning like it might not be a blood sugar spiking food like, let's just say, white processed bread, right? But you could, and it doesn't happen to everyone, but you could sit down and you could eat just a big steak at one meal because you're pretending that you're on the carnivore diet. And when you're on that, you can also get a massive spike in blood sugar as well. Doesn't happen to everyone, but absolutely can happen. So we can look at the glycemic load as well as spiking blood sugar. All right, here's the other thing. Those highs and lows throughout the day can actually cause more stress on the body. And I spoke about that, and I talked about it in the webinar that I just did with the cortisol response, or at least the stress response in the body. Fluctuations in highs and lows in blood sugar can increase inflammation. So that's going to create more damage in the body in terms of inflammation itself and the processes of cleanup. But also it's going to create more oxidative damage. And that's one thing I'd like to add right now. Every time you eat, even the healthiest food in the world, you are creating free radical damage in the body. It's just part of normal human metabolism. When you exercise, you're creating free radical damage. When you breathe, you're creating free radical damage. The more you breathe, the more free radical damage you create. The more you eat, the more free radical damage you create, which means oxidation. It basically means rusting on the inside out. It's what causes us to age. It's one of the reasons for aging. It's not the only, but it's a big reason for aging. And it's also why, though, your body needs antioxidants, and it can use up a lot of those antioxidant-based stores. It's why fruit and vegetables are not the enemy. They will help you with this oxidative damage. So really important we look at that. The more times throughout the day, the more oxidative damage. Here's a big one as well. Every time you eat, you're using energy for digestion. So if you're always using energy for digestion, you may become tired after a week or 2 weeks or so on this diet, meaning like if you're always eating heavy food throughout the day. Now, some people feel energized. That's the bottom line, and that's the truth. Because they used to just eat sporadically. They never had timing for their meals, so their blood sugar was all over the place, or they were eating more processed food. And now if you get onto a whole food plan, that's breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then 2 small snacks in between, you can actually stabilize your blood sugar a little bit more. Again, it might be a little too elevated for me, but you won't get the super highs and the super lows, okay? And I'm still not against a mid-afternoon snack. A lot of people go from eating lunch around 11:30 a.m. or 12, and they don't have dinner until 7 o'clock. Well, if you're exercising during that time, or you are more of the ectomorphic body type, you might want an easy-to-digest snack mid-afternoon. I'm not saying that. And an easy-to-digest snack is going to reverse a lot of the repercussions that we're talking about, especially if it was a smoothie or some green juice or something like easy to digest, maybe even some nuts. And what that would do is it would satiate you, it would stabilize low blood sugar, and it would provide antioxidants for the body. So again, I'm not against that. I'll move towards what I am pro or most for most people in just a moment. But the other thing I wanted to talk about was this. When you are eating all the time, you are not moving into a process of cleanup. So if you're bringing more in all the time, you're always working on the digestive system. Again, that takes energy. The digestive system is not being allowed to mop up bacteria and other things that are there because they're taking and processing the new food. Your liver has to certainly do more work, and typically your kidneys as well. Again, kidneys are going to work harder depending on the type of food, quality of the food. Typically, the kidneys are working a little bit harder the higher the protein content of each meal or just throughout the course of a day. That will be affected by hydration levels. If you're eating a good amount of protein, but you're staying very well hydrated and you don't have any intestinal permeability, well, then the kidneys don't have to work as hard. If you have high stomach acid, then the stomach, or a good amount of stomach acid, normal levels, that will also help to break down the protein to a greater degree. This is why we recommend daily digestive enzymes with whole food meals. It will help you break down those carbs, fats, and proteins to a better degree so that your body, including the 28 feet of digestive tract, have to work less. So there can be pros for focusing on eating every, let's say, 2.5, 3 hours. But there are also a lot of cons in terms of the fountain of youth. And that's because we know right now that a hypocaloric diet, meaning less calories, lower calories than your body actually needs, that it burns, can help with longevity, can help to live longer. There's a couple caveats to this, so I don't want you to go out and just not eat food or starve yourself. I am absolutely not recommending it. And it's also one of the reasons why I believe a 16-hour fast is too long for most people. And I can't go through all of that today because I've already done multiple shows on that. I did a webinar on it. I did Should You Skip Breakfast? I did a podcast on that. If you need to find those podcasts, head on over to stevencabral.com/podcasts or just ask the question at cabralsupportgroup.com. And our team will show you why sometimes fasting through breakfast is not ideal for many people that are stressed, that stress is causing thyroid-based issues, or if they're an ectomorph body type or an even ectomesomorph body type. Can an endomorph get away with it? Oftentimes, yes, unless they have thyroid-based issues, which many do. Hypothyroidism, not based on just autoimmunity. They have lower levels of thyroid output. So, and if those lower levels of thyroid output are caused by being in a survival-based state in terms of hormones, adiponectin, or in terms of too high cortisol production or norepinephrine, then all of those things can cause a cessation, a lowering of body fat burning or lipolysis. That's important to remember. The other one is this. A lot of people are putting on what I talked about earlier. Actually, it was last week now on puffiness and swelling and weight gain. A lot of people are holding a lot of water. For example, if you wake up in the morning and you look leaner, and then by the end of the day, you put on 4 or 5 pounds and look puffier, you most likely are, well, not most likely, you are not putting on 1, 2, 3, or 4 pounds of body fat that day. That's not happening. That's all water retention. I tell people all the time, run the organic acids test, run the thyroid adrenal hormone. You will find out why you are retaining all that water. Could be gut-based dysfunction, could be inflammatory levels, could be higher levels of cortisol, could be lower levels of thyroid. There are multiple reasons. But again, if you could run the big 5 labs, well, that's the way to be. You'll find out everything. But if you can't, start with the organic acids test and the thyroid adrenal hormone, or even just start with the organic acids test and the hair tissue mineral analysis, which is called the starter kit, and you'll figure out what's going on in terms of nervous system and gut function. Great place to start. But so here's the thing. We know that hypocaloric, as well as a prolonged period of fasting, increases autophagy. I did a show. Let me see if I can find it here. I wrote about it, of course, in the rain barrel effect. But it was on autophagy. You know what? You could just actually head on over to stevencabral.com/podcasts and type in Noble, Noble, or autophagy. It's autophagy. So it's AUTOPAGHY, I believe. I might have spelled that incorrectly. But head on over there, type in autophagy or type in Noble, and you will find those. One podcast number, just right here, I found it, is episode 255. So way back in the day. And then I'm just going to type in Noble for you right now, and we'll see if Nobel Prize pops up for the Nobel Prize in Oncology in 2016, which was on autophagy. So the best thing you can do is always head on over the show notes page as well. Today's podcast is episode 1180. So head on over to stevencabral.com/1180, and we'll link everything up for you right there. You'll be able to find your past shows right there as well. So you can check out that, and then the more recent episode would have been on 1055. Okay, so here's the thing though. We know that we want the prolonged fasting, and that is absolutely the closest thing that we can get to the fountain of youth. I recommend 12 hours overnight from about 7 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock at night to 6 in the morning or 7 in the morning. Completely normal. Those would be part of every tradition out there. You stop eating when it gets dark. You can begin eating again when it's light. You have about 12 hours of light, 12 hours of dark. That's different during the summer. I understand that. But that is basic human physiology. Cortisol levels drop at night. Melatonin levels rise. Sympathetic nervous system hopefully turns off. Parasympathetic nervous system turns on. We rest, we repair, we digest, we detoxify at night, not when we're putting more food in. So you allow your body with sleep and relaxation and downtime in order to rebuild and rejuvenate the body. If you're working till 10 o'clock at night, if you're stimulated with TV and iPads and stress till right up till before you go to bed, then really you don't have the 12 hours on, 12 hours off. Guaranteed your body is breaking down faster than it's rebuilding. That is entropy. That is the aging-based process. We need sleep. We need downtime. We need balance. If you are breaking down faster than you're building up, if you fast longer, that puts you into a greater catabolic state. I don't want to use generalizations, but a lot of biohackers out there, I get questions all the time. Is this correct? Is this correct? I say it's not that biohackers, and again, like I'm just kind of throwing that out there because I mean, what I do is biohacking, but not from the perspective of what people think biohacking is. A lot of biohackers are doing is they're taking a study and they're looking at the end state and they're trying to circumnavigate the body to do something it wants. And I can tell you this, that works, and it works in the short term. And then eventually the body, it can't compensate anymore. So when people are already in a catabolic state and they want to get leaner and leaner and they just want to, really just fast for these massive periods of time, works in the beginning. Then they start to get more wrinkles, more spots on the skin, aging-based spots. We can talk about what those are in the future. We'll do a whole podcast on skin-based health. Their hair might start to get more brittle. Their nails might get weaker. They might have more anxiety, more overwhelm. They might have insomnia-based issues. They might start to see a decreased performance in their exercise or more inflammation after workouts. All of these things are very predictable. Very predictable, and it's simply because I have the experience of being able to see them from private practice. Not that they teach you that in a textbook. They don't. There's no textbook out there. It's also why it's so important to just take the advice of a lot of practitioners that you might be listening to that work in private practice, that have worked in private practice, that aren't just looking at research studies, because research studies are in a vacuum a lot of times. And we need to look at real world situations. And it's why I can tell you this, that the very best thing that I've seen for people, the very best way to improve telomere length, to improve biological based markers, to improve overall longevity and quality of life is to keep your body, and this is going to sound maybe a little strange in the very beginning, so I want you to hear it out. You want to keep your body with the lowest amount of calories you can consume while maintaining a healthy weight, but focused on the highest number of micronutrients possible. And let me say it in a different way. So your protein, carbs, and fats are going to make up the calories. Those are going to be your macros. They matter. But it's actually like a colleague of mine and friend of mine, Sal, who's over at Mind Pump, and I did their great podcast over there. He just did a post. I know I was scrolling. I'm not on social media a lot, but I'm on Instagram because I enjoy Instagram and I enjoy the activity over there with the community. And I definitely do read your comments, respond to comments. But he said something to the extent, I believe, that macros only matter. They matter, but they really only matter when you're at the beginner stage. And I thought there was a lot of wisdom to that because I use macros and I will use macros with people in the beginning, but really never in the long term because macros should only be there to help you learn how to eat. But the problem with macros is that if you use the formula of if it fits your macros, you don't focus on the quality of food. So for now, what I'm doing for people is really just showing them percentage of their plate. And I'm saying to them, half your plate has to be vegetables. Then we get into should it be cooked or raw? And then a quarter of your plate should be. And then this is determined basically on your weight loss goals and body transformation, your sensitivity to carbohydrates, because it could be a starch, it could be sweet potatoes, and it could be yams, or if you're okay with grains, it might be oats, or it might be wild rice or something like that. And then a quarter might be protein. And then that could be vegan based, a fish, we're looking at more how your plate is designed. And then we get into fat. We're like, okay, 2 tablespoons of olive oil or half an avocado. And so we're looking at it as a food rather than, it has to be 32 grams of carbs and your protein should be at 38 grams of protein and your starches should be at this. So you see what I'm saying? Is we're not having to get that intricate. And we never have anymore. So that's why I can tell you, this works so much better. Because you don't have to be fixated on weighing your food, counting points, figuring out your macros. And again, I'm not against it in the beginning. I'm pro everything that's educational. I have a lot of friends and their programs are based around macros and teaching you how to understand food and how it works with your body. I'm not against that. I'm pro that. I just believe that in the long term, you're going to be able to live a long, healthy, stress-free life with a great relationship with food without you having to worry about what those macros are. You're going to look at it and say, you know what? I want the majority of my plate to be vegetables. And then I want to add a healthy fat. Why don't I pick a monounsaturated fat such as avocado or olive oil? I know that there's research that's pro-saturated fat, and then there's research against saturated fat. But you're hard-pressed to find any research that isn't all pro-monounsaturated fat, such as olive oil and avocado. Easy. Now, there are others, but I'm just giving you 2 examples today because it's not supposed to be a definitive podcast on the topic. And then for protein, well, it's almost a moot point for most of the people in my practice. I work with people that are vegan. I work with people that only eat fish, and they won't eat meat. And then I eat people that eat meat as well. And I just teach them meat is going to be like all the longest lived people in the world have always used it, or protein, as a garnish to the meal, about a handful. It's not your entire meal. It's not the centerpiece like we used to do back in the fitness and body transformation days where everything had to be centered around your protein. Because protein is thermogenic and it absolutely does help you transform your body. And there is truth to the amino acids and there is truth to all of those things. And it works and it keeps you satiated. I get it. I don't deny the science. But when I'm talking about keeping mTOR, keeping IGF-1 levels lower, well, that's what helps to prevent a lot of types of cancer. That's what helps with longevity. That's what helps with the arteries. So it does matter. It matters. Now, again, when you're teenager, 20s, 30s, not as big a deal. Once you start moving into 40s, 50s, you should really be thinking about longevity, fighting against dementia, cancer, blood pressure, which is strokes as well, and heart disease. Because I've talked about it many times on the podcast. If you can bypass those 4, you're good. Honestly, it's just freak accidents and injuries and things like that make up a lot of the others. Things that aren't always within your control. And I'm not saying cancer is always within your control either. I'm not saying that at all. Because there's a lot of healthy people that get cancer. They might have been exposed to something they didn't even know about, right? But here's the thing. You can control the heart disease. You can control the high blood pressure, the diabetes, the strokes that go along with it. You can control those. Now, again, there's always going to be those freak things such as a pulmonary embolism. That can happen. It can happen from being on a plane too long. It can happen. But for the most part, you're going to be able to control it through good, healthy nutrition. So I'm going to sum it up right here. The fountain of youth, as we know it right now, I'm going to say nutritional supplement aside, because there's a bunch of nutritional supplements that you can use to increase aging, meaning increase it in a positive way, to live longer. And you can control that through blood sugar and through mitochondrial function. We'll talk about that in the future. Right now, whole food nutrition, make sure, again, if you can't fast for 12 hours, go back, fix the HPA axis, fix those adrenals, right? Because those are pretty much the only people, low blood sugar, that can't fast for that long. Fix that, just like I had to, and then get into a 12 to 14 hour overnight fast. Ideally from 6 o'clock at night to about 8 o'clock in the morning once you get going. It's 14 hours. It's fantastic. Could you do a little longer? Yes, but only if you don't start your day like a firecracker, that you don't start your day like a bolt of lightning where you're super stressed. Because your body, you can't fool it. You can continue to fast, but you're going to become more catabolic and just continue to, your body's going to spike your own blood sugar. If you don't believe me, you can just test it. You can literally test it. Test your cortisol, simple adrenal hormone test or thyroid adrenal hormone test, simple saliva test right at home. You can test your blood sugar at home. You can test your heart rate at home. You can test all of these things. I talked about that last week to know if you are in that fight or flight and stressed out. If not, you might as well eat some food. Give your body what it needs. Combat that stress. Tell your body that it's not in survival mode. All right. So we have the 12 to 14 hours a day. And then once a week, or even if it's just once or twice a month, do a 24-hour fast. Fast like I do probably 3 times per month on Mondays. Sunday night when I stop dinner, I fast until Monday night at dinner. I have dinner each night with my family. I have a full day of eating on Sunday. My cheat meal's typically on Saturday. And then on Sunday, normal day of eating, I stop dinner Sunday night, and then I don't eat again until Monday night. I get 24 hours. That is true autophagy. That's true cleaning up of the body, cellular buildup. And then every 12 weeks, I do our functional medicine detox. That's 2.5 days, a little bit more than that, with just shake fasting. And the reason we do shakes, it's super low calorie, but it gives you the amino acids with a little bit of that protein, but all the phase 1 and phase 2 detox components, because we live in a super toxic world where there's over 77,000 man-made chemicals. And most people are short on the phase 1, phase 2 nutrients. But I've done many podcasts on that, so you're welcome to tune back and check out those shows. As of right now, this is it. Fasting, then every once in a while, prolonged fast, like it would have been built, it is built into our DNA from our times of not being always able to access food. And then sticking to 3 main meals per day. You can decide on the timing. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'll get into the size of the meals. I'll talk about that on another show. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, 4 to 5 hours between meals. And what that allows for you to do is drop down to normal blood sugar levels, to tap into body fat burning, to get into a little bit of autophagy, all of the cellular cleanup, to not use all of your energy for digestion. So I did previous podcasts on that. Check out the podcast called Why 3 Meals Per Day. I believe that's the name of it. If not, just go to stevencabral.com/podcast. and type in 3 meals, and I'm sure you'll be able to find that one. Hopefully this was helpful, everyone. Really appreciate it. I love talking on this topic to really make sense of the wild media world we're in right now, where people will take what's hot and what's new and try to say this is the end-all be-all, when really we've known now for hundreds and thousands of years what is the end-all be-all, and it's not going to change because our biology hasn't changed yet, and until it does change and adapts to something else, this is it. This is what really works. So thank you so much. And as always, if this was helpful, please do feel free to pass this along to anyone else it could serve. Ever wonder what the best sauna, blue blockers, sleep trackers, wake lights, salt lamps, or other health gadgets are? Or what about the top non-toxic mattresses, sheets, soaps, bath products, toothpaste, and cookware? Or would you like to know the cleanest choices for hemp parts, meal delivery services, supplements, and much more? I personally curated, researched, and now created a resource page of all of my top picks that continues to grow each week. These are the exact products I use in my own life, with my family, in my private practice, and they're the ones I trust. To find out all of my up-to-date recommendations and all the details, simply head on over to stevencabral.com/resources.